Welcome back to Jersey Matters. There's sharks in those waters off the Jersey Shore. In fact, there are at least 5 great white sharks. How do we know? Because they're being tracked by Chris Fisher, who is the founding chairman of O-Search Shark Tracker. And he says there's really nothing to worry about. Talk about your company, O-Search.
Well, O-Search is a group that really we put together starting back in 2007 to bring world-class watermen, people who work on the water, together with scientists to solve some of these bigger puzzles that are fundamentally important to making sure all our future grandkids can eat food and that we can make sure we got an ocean full of fish for the future. And it was really interesting to come into the space and see that we just didn't have people who worked on the water enabling our scientists to go beyond where they can go, because for the most part, they don't have any boats, they don't have any money, and they don't know how to catch what they study. So what we did was build an enterprise and deliver that ocean expertise to the science community. And then we've just exploded our basis of knowledge around things like white sharks in the North Atlantic since 2012.
And there are always these scary articles. I read one headline, predators lurking off the New Jersey shore. It's scaring people. Should they be scared?
No, I mean, people shouldn't be scared. They should actually be terrified if the ocean is not full of white sharks, because they are the wolf of the ocean, the balance keeper. If we lose our white sharks, we lose our fish and our shellfish, because the second tier of the food chain runs amok and wipes out all our food and wipes out the recreational and commercial fishing industry. So this is actually something to celebrate, the return of the white shark off the East Coast. It's a very slow recovery. We were down to very, very low populations starting around 2000. We began a slow incremental increase, and we're still a fraction of the population. It should be celebrated. And the idea about a shark lurking, I mean, they're swimming around in the water. It's where they live, and they're doing their job, and they're actually helping.
I read in one of the articles that you did have some suggestions about how you can keep out of a shark's way. There are some telltale signs when there's a shark in the water. Could you explain them?
Sure. I mean, you can take something that's almost completely unlikely to happen and make it even less likely to happen just by looking at the ocean and being smart. So when you're on the beach and if you see a bunch of bait fish crashing and birds diving on them, bigger fish feeding, seals in the area feeding, then you know that the food chain is happening there. It's going off. There will be white sharks on that. So you go and you just move to a quieter section of the beach where the food chain is not so active. It's very simple, and it will provide a lot more relief to people.
Are we seeing an increase in white sharks, or is it just that we're tracking them better?
We are seeing a slow and steady increase of white sharks. These animals can't increase their numbers quickly. They're not sexually mature and can't have babies until they're about 20. And then females only give birth to about 8 pups every other year. So you'll never get a big spike in numbers. They just don't reproduce that fast. But since we started looking after the sharks and made some fishery regulations, getting gill nets off the beaches, primarily to help the striper fishery recover and the redfish fisheries recover back in the late 80s, early 90s, we found out years later that that is the nursery of the baby white shark. So once we stopped doing that, we started to have more baby white sharks make it to become mature white sharks. And now we're 20, 25 years later from that. We're starting to see more big mature animals passing by your beaches, heading to their feeding aggregations in the northeastern United States and Atlantic Canada. And we just got this slow, steady increase occurring. And then they are able to impact the seals much more in your region.
I do like the names. I was looking in the article, Carolina, Cabot, Vimy, Shaw. Who comes up with the names?
Most of the times on the names, we try to give those to the local communities we're operating off. So that the people feel like it's their sharks. When you look at Cabot, we caught him up in Nova Scotia. He's named after the great explorer and the Cabot Trail. Vimy is named after Vimy Ridge, where the Canadian military forces really set the tone in World War II, I believe, and really established themselves as an independent nation. And so we try to blend in history. We named Catherine off of Massachusetts after Catherine Lee Bates, who wrote America the Beautiful, who was a resident of Cape Cod. So we try to integrate some history because there's a lot of kids following these sharks and they can get interested in sharks and learn a little history.
One of the sharks that we have gotten used to reading about is Mary Lee. And I understand you've lost sight of Mary Lee.
Mary Lee touches a real soft spot in me. Mary Lee was named after my mom. And she really lit up the East Coast because she was so coastal, particularly in your area. She swam right up Barnegat Bay in the bay. Really stunned us all at the time of how much these large sharks are. You know, they go wherever they want. They go wherever the life is, and they balance the system. They take out the weak, the dead, and the dying. And so if there's a lot of bait in the bay, they're going to be in the bay. If there's a lot of, bait on the beach, just like I mentioned earlier, they're going to be on that. That's their job. And Mary Lee's battery ran out. We know those are 5-year batteries in the tags. We got a beautiful 5-year track. She led us to the birthing area in the New York, New Jersey Bight, where we then tagged 19 baby white sharks, and they showed us the coastal nursery between there and South Carolina. And so Mary Lee, I suspect, is fine. And if you look back at her tracks and where she was during this time of the year, she's going to be in that very similar region right now, because we have learned these animals follow very predictable, repeatable migratory paths. And nothing's changed. We just know now.
It's a beautiful tribute to your mother. I appreciate you spending the time today. And letting people know that they have nothing to be concerned about, that the great white sharks are a good thing. As a matter of fact, it would be rare to be bitten by a great white shark, no matter what Jaws says, right? There are other sharks that can be, if you're going to get bit, it's probably not a great white shark.
Yeah, and sharks in general, on average, there's about 8 fatalities worldwide. And think about how often we're trying to fool them. We dress up like their food. We put on black wetsuits. We go out swimming amongst their food, seals and other fish, and we very rarely fool them. So they have a tremendous capacity to decipher what they're trying to eat versus a human, even though we're dressing up like their food.
That was Chris Fisher, founding chairman of OSearch. When we come right back, one New Jersey community is in the middle of a huge fight over low-income housing being built on preserved property. We'll tell you about it when Jersey Matters comes right back.